Yeah, it's now recording. Okay, so let's redo this one more time. So I think what I'm going to do probably is just, do some visuals and like a little chart, or just at least find a chart that will
Visuals would be
explain it
great,
well.
Shriji.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I feel like I'm missing. So I'll prepare something and we'll talk about that, because this is the most important aspect of understanding Sanatana Dharma in what it is in comparison to whatever we hear. The definitions of what mukti means and the definitions of what atma and anatma. So these are critical components of our learning. I'll work on a visual. But let's again go back to think about um,
I think there's a nice visual in the Chinmaya.
is
Chinmaya.
there?
Yeah, I can forward it later on.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, that's what I was actually going to as well, Satiji, because their visuals are really great, and their
Yeah,
charts, and
exactly.
Swami Chinmayananda does a lot of visual work, so I really appreciate those. So
Yeah, and
that's what I was
if
thinking.
you understand the Panchakoshas, I think it becomes much easier.
Mm-hmm. And the
You
Panchakosha
shared the
visual, I think, is
Panchakosha
very,
before.
yeah, I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's easy for us to just pull it up. Um, So maybe we'll just quickly Google it. I don't have the visual ready, but it's not very difficult to.
So while you pull it up, Guruji, so it is the chitta which means which has to get purified or whatever, because if the atma is just going to uh, carry on the chittas thing every janma, and the chittas which is going to get more and more purified or whatever to reach the state of uh, Brahman or whatever. So which means it is the chitta which is learning and evolving. Is that which we is that does that even make sense? Am I even thinking
Yeah.
straight?
So we are purifying the chitta, like, whatever is in the memory and what we are carrying forward. And I remember, like, Shakuntala Devi, the mathematician, used to say something, and she would say, like, whatever we sow in a very nice, like, unadulterated land, you can reap a crop. But if you don't sow anything and just let it be, then you only see weeds growing in between. So it's how much you care for that crop. And this is more about in the child psychology scenario that she would have said that. But think about, like, if we are utilizing our time very much just to entertain the body and no entertain our senses, whether we call it food or whatever those things may be, and we are just focused on the materialistic things, then that's what our memory carries. And actually, there is a nice analogy, there is a nice Puranic story that comes in Bhagavatam about Jada. So Jada was a king who had a beautiful kingdom and had lots of sons, and he was a very great king. And at some point, he feels like, he needs to go and take sannyasa and just only focus on meditation and do his tapas to achieve the mukti. So what he does, he just gives all of his kingdom to his sons and let them rule it. And without looking backwards, he just goes into the forest and starts meditating. And he does, like, amazing tapas. He gets a lot of jnana. He understands. He never misses or thinks back to, oh, I wish, I had my beautiful bed, or I had great food, or I had my, like, my family members and all of that. He never misses them. So what happens at some point, he goes to a little pond to drink water. At that time, there is a mother deer that is giving birth to a baby, and a lion roars from afar. And I think the mother runs away, leaving the baby there, or something like that. Anyway, so this Jada Bharata takes care of this baby, the baby deer, and he feeds it, and then he just builds affection towards the little baby deer, and he takes care of it, and his mind is now suddenly very attached to this baby deer. fawn. What happens at some point when the baby has grown into a deer and it understands what it is supposed to do, so it runs into the forest. Now Jadabharata starts missing the deer. And because he misses it so much, then he actually, it causes him physical ailment and he is very worried about it, anxiety, and all of those things happen. And he is very close to death. And even then, he is only thinking about the deer that left. And he dies with the thoughts of the deer. And Bhagavatam says that the next janma he has taken is that of a deer, because that's what he carried in the last few months or years of his life. And he did not remember anything else because he has left attachment of everything else. And what his memory carried forward is this, attachment to the deer so much that he actually became a deer. So what they say is like, how much are you feeding your chitta or your antahkarana together actually? How much are you feeding it with information that is related to anatma? How much we are surrounded in, like, we are swimming in the whirlpool versus being a little more stable and let things run around us. Like, it's nobody's, okay, I shouldn't say that, but we are not going to run away from our homes, from the grihastha to only think about and, like, go into a forest and meditate, because that is not our scenario. We have been given responsibilities, but the responsibilities need to be taken care of without attachment. And I don't know how many times the word attachment and non-attachment come in Gita. That's the essence of it. Do your duty because you are given these duties. Do them with grace, but don't do them with attachment. Don't worry about whether, oh, will I be able to do a good job at it or would I not? And what if this happens? Then I'll be happy. If something else happens, I won't be happy. These are the things that Bhagavan says that's not in your control. So don't worry about those and bring anxieties and depressions into your life. Leave them aside. Just do what you're supposed to be doing and do it with non-attachment. And leave all your actions at the feet of Bhagavan and let him give the results that are probably, like, in a very strategic view of everything in the universe, because there's so many connections that happen between human beings, or like for other not just human beings, for all the beings. So he knows when to connect a particular person with some other being, or when a particular person suddenly meets this other person and they exchange some goods or services or knowledge, and then they depart. That's the essence of what the body, mind, and senses are supposed to be doing. And the non-attachment will happen only by understanding that we are the Atma. Who I really am is the Atma, and I am not this body, mind, and senses. This body is just performing its duty in this particular life. Did that make sense?
Yes. And chitta also has like vasanas and karmas is part of chitta, right?
Correct. Vasanas for sure.
Vijay, Vijay,
Go ahead,
Vijay,
Padma.
that, when we say responsibility, the commitment,
Mm.
that comes with attachment. See, in the sense that, okay, it is my responsibility to do this. Why am I feeling that it is this responsibility? Why do I think that this is a commitment for me to do? It's because there is some underlying connection between those two objects, right? So I'm just wondering if it has to be something like that lotus example that we all always talk. We're there, we should do it. We should do it because we are there. But uh, but we also should not be there.
Correct. In the sense of, for example, I work for an organization, and they trust my abilities in performing certain duties, and in exchange I have a materialistic need. I get paid for those services that I will provide to them, and there are certain number of hours or certain number of responsibilities they expect out of me. And when I am working as an employee, I take it as I'm serving God because He wanted me to do those functions with those colleagues for those clients, and there is some connection somewhere. So this is a commitment not to the organization or not to those colleagues or clients, but it is to Bhagavan's will because He knows who He is connecting us to. And if we can only perform those duties with the passion and dedication that we would serve God, with whatever emotions we serve God, if we can just align the same things, but I cannot also then say, okay, because I'm performing these duties, I have larger expectations, or if I don't get this from the work that I'm currently doing, then I'll be very disappointed. Then it is not the organization that is causing me the disappointment, or the client that is causing the disappointment, which is all the anatma. It is my assumption that they will do certain things because I am expecting them to do. And to be honest, who am I to expect some result, or for somebody else to behave the way I want, right? So the commitments we are given usually are not necessarily our mind is attached to them or come from attachment. They surround us, and we have to identify what those commitments are and do our best to just complete the work that has been assigned, or that comes with those commitments. I'll give you another example. So I have a son. I would have taken care of him for, almost 18 hours a day when he was a baby. And then probably I needed to be with him, say, 12 hours a day when he was a little older. And now I hardly get time with him, probably once every 3 weeks, or sometimes once every 4 weeks. And that's the extent of my responsibility. And as he is growing up, that time will reduce much further. I cannot assume and say, oh, because I've raised you for 18 hours a day, then you have to sit with me now for 18 hours a day. Not that none of us will say that. But I'm saying it's that attachment and what's required and what proportion, and just doing that as, I wouldn't even call it duty, because there is the correct Sanskrit term is anushtanam. Duty is a very rough translation of that. It's doing it as serving the Lord.
Also your dharma, right? Like part of it, your job is your dharma. You're doing
Exactly.
some duties because of that.
Exactly. Though there is a materialistic aspect to it, an exchange of services and goods that are happening in an employer-employee relationship, but there is a dharma that as an employee, I have to do these to serve my employer. Doesn't mean that they can take advantage of my and make me subservient, because that's also not what Krishna is saying. He says, no, go and fight. Any other thoughts? Has that been helpful, Jayashree ji?
I'm
Yes,
actually,
I think I will
sorry.
learn more as we go as well. So I'm hoping to understand
Yeah.
this more. At least, yes. Thank you so much.
I can give an example. This is Ratna.
Go ahead,
And
Ratna ji.
yeah, I'm a teacher.
Mhm.
And what I'm supposed to do is to teach the best I can. That's my work, right? But I cannot be expecting, all my students who have taken classes with me should become, CEOs or something like that, and that's unknown. In fact, I don't even care what happens to them, but still I have to do the best I can when I'm teaching. So that may be a part of a story, you know, of
Exactly.
yeah, what it is about.
The same rule applies to all sorts of relationships, right? Like so sorrow can happen to us because of mostly because of people, situations, places, or certain things. For example, my old car can give me some sorrow, or a situation like a financial situation or something like that can give me sorrow. Uh, when it comes to people, the difference is the expectations that somebody else will understand what I'm looking for and behave according to my wishes so that I can be happy. And not understanding that the other person is also trying to be happy and they have their own agenda to be happy, and I have my own agenda to be happy. So nobody is here born on earth to make somebody else happy. Everybody wants their own ananda. Ultimately, we are all just looking for that, right? So what is that I should give rather than what I should expect? And just changing that equation a little bit will make a whole lot of difference.
From the point of view of
Sorry, Padmaji, you cut off.
Are
Okay.
you sharing something, Shriji? It's a
Please
blank
go ahead,
screen.
Taraji.
It's a blank
Oh,
screen right now.
screen. Oh, okay. Sorry. I was actually sharing the Panchakosha's picture. What I will do is to share this in our forum. And there, as somebody said, like, there's so much, the whole, Gita is Atma, the Shastram, right? The Brahma Vidya. So we will learn by the end of, like, chapter 2, there are quite a few slokas until sloka 25. There is so much that Bhagavan is going to talk about Atma and the attributes of Atma, the nature of Atma, and things like that. So we will continue this conversation. On day one, we may not feel that it's very clear to us, but doesn't mean that that's how it'll be when we start reading further. So we'll move to sloka 12 now. Who would like to read this?
Can I do it, please?
Go ahead, and you have to read a little slowly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Na tvevaham jatu nasam na tvam neme janadipaha na chaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayamatah param. Aham, I. Jatu, ever. Natu asam, did not exist. Na eva, not indeed. Tvam, you. Ashi, did not exist. Iti, no. Na, not. Ime, these. Janadipaha, kings. Na asan, did not exist. Na, not. Atah param, hereafter. Sarve, all. Vayam, we. Bhavishyamaha, shall not exist. Cha, and. Na eva, not at all. There was never a time I did not exist, neither you nor these kings, nor will any of us cease to exist in the future. If all these people are going to die, how can it be said that they do not cause sorrow for the bereaved? Surely, since they are going to die, they must be the cause of sorrow, socha. Even those who are not on the battlefield are sochas because they too are eventually going to die. Addressing this doubt, Krishna shifted the discussion to the vision of the Atma. His statements were not meant as an argument to kill, but rather to provide an understanding of Dharma so that what was to be done could be done. Since Arjuna also wanted absolute Shreyas, Krishna talked about the nature of Atma. He said, "There is no time that I did not exist. To say that I did not exist at some time is not true. I always existed." Krishna was obviously, therefore, not an ordinary person. He was an avatara. He could say, "I always existed." Could the same thing be said of a jiva like Arjuna? Krishna said, "That you did not exist before is also not true. You too always existed." Being a prince, Arjuna was also not an ordinary person. Krishna therefore went on to say that all the stalwarts standing before them on the battlefield, leaders of the people, chieftains, commanders-in-chief, and all the other soldiers had also always existed. What Krishna is saying in this verse is that all of us are eternal. I was there before, and you were there before, as were all these other people. In his vision, they were all there before. The next question would be, what about later? I might have existed before, but I might not exist later. Will there be a time in the future when I am not? Krishna says, no. After the destruction of the body, you will continue to exist. We have a concept that everyone is born, and we have a horoscope to prove it. You know that you were born at a given time, and take this to mean that there was a time where you were not. This is a very well entrenched notion about the I, that I was born, that I am getting old, that I am going to die, and so on. If you are born, you will naturally get old. The notion that you are getting old is going to be there as long as you think you are born. In the vision of the Gita, there is no such thing as birth for you. Atma, I, is not born. The notion that you are born is negated here by using double negatives. That you celebrate the birthday of Krishna does not confirm the non-existence of Krishna before. It only confirms that on this particular day, in this particular name and form, Namarupa, Krishna was born. To say that he was born in this Namarupa is correct and creates new problems. But to say that Krishna was not there before, despite what people might think, is not true. Therefore, Krishna was not really born. He was as though born. Krishna went on to say that it is also not true to think that you were not there before. There was no time that you were not there. Krishna told Arjuna that he too essentially was timeless, and that everyone else was as eternal, as existent as Krishna was. Similarly, you always think that you will not exist later, a conclusion that calls for lamentation. This notion is also not true. Krishna said, whatever form you take yourself to be, you definitely exist. As an individual, jiva, you definitely exist. The jiva, the individuality, might not exist later, but as atma, you will always exist. Because the jivatva goes when a person is enlightened, only atma is meant to be taken here. It is in this sense that Krishna said to Arjuna, there was never a time when I was not, there was never a time when you were not, nor was there ever a time when all these leaders were not. Similarly, there will never be a time when all of us will not be. Does that mean that this feud will continue forever because all these Atmas are eventually going to be there, are going to be eternally there? No, the use of plural here was only with reference to forms, upadhis. There was never a time when we were not there, nor will there ever be a time when we will not be there. We can use pots and pot space as an example. The pots will come and go, but all the pot spaces will always be there because there is only one space. The words used in this verse, I, aham, you, tvam, we, vayam, kings, Janadipa, are all with reference to the bodies seemingly enclosing one Atma, like many pots enclosing one space.
Awesome. So we'll just do also the footnote, please.
Okay. Samipe sti,
Stitva.
stitva sviyam dharmam rupam anyatra adati
Adadhati.
Adadati iti upadi, that which imparts its qualities to another by staying close to it, is called an upadi.
Awesome. And just look at the importance of that definition, right? That which imparts its qualities to another by staying close to it. We are saying it is staying close. In this case, we are talking about the Atma and enlivening the forms, the bodies that it lives in. And the names and forms are therefore the upadhis. They're not saying each, the Atma is attached to the body. The Atma is staying close to it, untouched. So that's an important definition, and we will read more about that too. So shall we move into the next topic, or are there any questions or thoughts?
Just a second. What did you say was the upadhi? The body?
So names and forms are upadhis.
Okay. So what is it imparting its qualities on by staying close to it?
So the Atma is imparting its qualities of, the Satchitananda, the Chit essentially, or the consciousness into the body, mind, and senses, the sense complex, what Chinmayananda would have called BMS complex. So the Atma staying close, what forms the upadhis, the names and forms.
Oh, it says here that which imparts its qualities to another is called the upadhi, which means that would make the Atma the upadhi, because that's the one which is imparting its qualities on another.
Or maybe the way we should take it as like the bodies staying close to the Atma, we are superimposing the qualities of the body, mind, sense complex on the Atma, and the superimposition is what's causing us ignorance of who we are.
On the chit, right? Not on
Yeah.
the, yeah, okay.
But the upadhi, actually, the meaning is like the names and forms. It's not the alternative name for Atma.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Shall we move to the next topic? And this also is an extremely important topic, because we generally think each soul, like, there is a soul in each body. So here, that confusion, there is, but there isn't. So that confusion will be revealed and negated for us. Who would like to read this one?
I can.
Go ahead, Taraji.
Atmas are not many. Shankara makes this important observation here in the last line of his commentary, Bhashya, Deha Bedha Anuvritya Bahuvachanam Na Atma Bedha Abhiprayena. The plural has been used here with reference to the various bodies and not with reference to the one Atma, the self. The people standing before Krishna and Arjuna all had different physical bodies. Only from the standpoint of the physical bodies there is plurality, not from the standpoint of Atma. There are no differences in Atma. It is not a Krishna Atma existed, an Arjuna Atma existed, and other Atmas existed. And all these having existed before will continue to exist forever. That is not the contention here at all. Atmas are not many. There is only one Atma. Atma that is not subject to time. Nitya Atma, being without form and attributes, can only be one. Anitya, that which is subject to time, means anything that has a form with attributes with an upadhi. Only then can it be subject to time. But an Atma that is subject to time is not the Atma we are talking about. Atma is the very basis, the adhisthana of time, and therefore is not subject to time. Because it is not subject to time, it is nitya. Because the forms, upadhis, are many, there are many people. Whereas Atma is one whole consciousness, Chaitanya, not bound by time. In that consciousness alone is my mind, your mind, and any other mind. These minds differ, as do the bodies. When we count, the bodies are many, but not from the standpoint of consciousness, chit. Thus, what is necessary is the negation of a notion. Instead of telling Arjuna that Atma is Nitya, thereby creating a concept in his mind, Krishna removed the notion of his being time bound. When we are told that Atma is eternal, we think of Atma as having a long, long life. Here, instead, the concept of Atma being time bound is knocked off. It is negated. There was never a time when I, you, or anyone else was not, nor will there be a time when we will not be. Atma being timeless. Since you cannot cry for the timeless, can you scroll?
You're here?
Yeah, Atma is not a cause for sorrow, it is asocya. Anatma alone is subject to change, it is anitya. Even if you want to stop this present second, you cannot because it's already gone. Therefore, crying for anatma is foolish. Both atma and anatma, therefore, are asocya. Anything time bound is always time bound. You cannot expect constancy from something whose nature is change itself. If you are aggrieved or sad because something that changes by nature is non constant, what you need is proper understanding of the nature of Atma and Anatma, neither of which is a matter for sorrow. Either way you take it, this fact remains. Therefore, the first line of the previous verse becomes increasingly true as our understanding of Atma and Anatma increases.
Okay, so we'll just stop here. So constancy of the Atma. Okay. So any thoughts,
Yeah,
questions?
in the paragraph that she just read, no, Atmas are not many. There's only one Atma. So are we saying that then we are all belonging? There's only one Atma in this case. For example, let's take this group here. There's only one Atma, and we are all different. The attributes and hence the different forms that we have, which means this Atma is the same as the original consciousness that Mamaji was explaining. Meaning, ultimately, it's only
Exactly.
one Atma.
Exactly.
Okay.
The consciousness that exists cannot be different between you and me. Your consciousness is exactly my consciousness. The awareness that I exist, that is the same across all of us. Like last time, Pranati was talking about the independent variable, right? And I said yes, but then I thought about it. It's not it's not a variable. It is actually a constant that is consistently across all of us. What changes in the equation is what makes us and the composition of who we are as a body, mind, and sense complex. And what we feed that mind and what we feed our senses, that just transforms us because of the three gunas. Otherwise, the underlying substratum, the principle, the foundation of who we are, that is exactly the same. And the easier way to understand this, even if we think about the body, mind, sense complex, think about the atoms, the molecules that form us, the panchabhutas that make us. They're not different. It's the same panchabhutas, the same molecules, the same kind of periodic table that makes us all. But then what is different? So on various levels, the underlying principles are the same. And especially the substratum being the one consciousness. And in Vishnu Sahasranamam classes, we've been talking about quite a few terms, and Vishnu Sahasranamam has very little of the Bhagavan's physical rupam, the Saguna rupam. Almost 70% of the namas are talking about the Nirguna Parabrahman, right? So there we were talking about namas like Sthanuhu or the nama, Vishnu itself, right? Like somebody who is spread across the universe. If he is spread everywhere, then how can he be different between how he spreads in me versus in you, if he is the same Bhagavan? So in many different namas, if you just look at each of those individual names that are given to Bhagavan, or the nature of Bhagavan, you will understand what they're talking about. It is in many of the even like the Vagyakaras would have written have done so many compositions, and they would have given the example of as if it's the string of pearls. The pearls are different, but what ties them all together is that thread, which is the invisible factor.
I think we are all like the pots,
Mm-hmm.
and space is the consciousness. We destroy the pots, the consciousness or the space becomes one.
Exactly. And the space is not doing anything separate or different in each of us. The space is
Right.
space.
Right. Whatever the pot does, it's not going to affect the space. Pot can be in different forms and shapes, which what we are all, just like Taraji was asking, all of us in this group, we are all like with different forms and shapes. But the space within is the same, which is the original consciousness.
Yeah. Heavy?
Yeah, I was about to say that we should probably stop here and let this sink in
Seriously,
before adding more.
I actually could feel the weight in that is from a Chit perspective. I could actually sense that, oh my God, everybody's feeling like, okay, I've just added like 2 additional kilos of weights of thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. I think we will conclude here unless there are any other thoughts. So we'll not read the next paragraph. We'll read it next week. And next week, I'll try to create a visual and that will probably support, what we are trying to say.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other thoughts? Anybody wants to share anything that they might have studied that will help the whole group?
Guruji, I really like the electricity analogy. Like electricity is supporting my laptop here, somebody who is watching TV or anywhere else. So it is not the job of the electricity, but the content itself is what the screen is showing. Right? I think you also brought up that point. Like the screen is going to show a lot of information, and the electricity is that thing which is aiding what is yet to be shown on the screen. So I think that is a great analogy, and I thought that will gel very well to this class.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's my favorite analogy too. Okay, so if there are no further thoughts, if you have the book or if you have the app, just try to read these, this first sloka one more time, because that's where the essence has started building up. And till sloka 25, we'll get to see more and understand more about the nature of who we are. Ultimately, this is where we are learning about who we really are. And we have given it a body, we have given it a mind, we have just fed our senses, and we gave it a name, and we call ourselves so and so. But what's the real nature of who in me, and what is that real nature of that chit? And understanding that, then we know what we are going behind, and it just turns our life 180 and start thinking inwards. And that just connects back to Lalita Sahasranamam class, where we were talking about antarmukha samaradhya bahirmukha sudurlabha. Outwardly, if you just look everything outside, it is very difficult to achieve mukti. But as soon as we turn inwards, it's very transformative kind of experience, just to say hello to yourself for the first time, and you've been living in this body forever. Okay. With that thought, we'll conclude here with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Sarvam Sriman Narayana Charanaravindarpanamastu. Thank you so much for joining. And if you have any thoughts you would like to share in person, please don't hesitate to message me.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Suji.
Thank you.
Dhanyawad.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Dhanyavadaha.